After the New Year's celebrations faded into memory, while others basked in fresh beginnings, I, Jasmine Sullivan, stepped into something far colder, a moment of clarity, wrapped in silence and veiled contempt. My husband, Brian Sullivan, CEO of Sullivan Group, had assigned Natalie, his ever-efficient secretary, to oversee the company's reopening ceremony. She walked around, handing red envelopes to every employee, one by one. Everyone but me. I stood there, invisible. No greeting, no recognition. Not even a glance. As I began to step forward, trying to anchor myself in a room where I no longer belonged, Natalie turned, her lips curled into a smirk, her voice a blade dipped in honey. "Still have the nerve to show up, Jasmine Sullivan, after freeloading off this company for years?" The room fell silent. That kind of silence that doesn't ask for justice. It waits for collapse. I didn't blink. I didn't tremble. I simply met her gaze, calm, detached, as if the sting of humiliation had nowhere to land. Without a word, I reached for my employee badge, pulled it off, and let it fall. A soft clink, barely audible, yet loud enough to signal the end of an era. I took out my phone and dialed Brian. Each ring echoed in my ears like the slow count before a final verdict. When he finally answered, his voice was sharp, irritated. "Jasmine, what the hell are you doing now?" His tone wasn't curious. It was dismissive. "I'm at a crucial business dinner. This deal could determine the company's future. Can't it wait?" I glanced at Natalie. Her grin widened. I steadied my breath and said no. Silence followed. Then Brian's voice turned cold. "Yes, I told Natalie to fire you." A quiet chill settled in my chest. Expected or not, the truth, when spoken plainly, always cuts deeper. I took another breath, then asked calmly, "Give me a reason." He laughed, not with humor, but with the arrogance of someone who believed himself untouchable. "I'm the CEO. I don't need a reason. You've held the sales manager title for 3 years and haven't closed a single deal. You think you have the right to ask why?" His voice rose, harsh and public. Even with my phone's volume low, his words filled the hall like a final judgment. "Sullivan Group doesn't keep dead weight." Then, click, the line went dead. For a moment, the hall was heavy with stillness. Then came a slow clap, mockingly theatrical. Natalie stepped forward, arms crossed, standing in the glow of her perceived victory. "You all heard that, didn't you?" she said with fake delight. "Even Mr. Sullivan said Jasmine is useless. Why should we keep her here?" Soft laughter rolled through the crowd, thin yet piercing. But their ridicule didn't hurt. Not anymore. Natalie looked me over with amused contempt. "You should start packing. Go home. Relax. After all, isn't being a decorative vase your real skill?" She sighed dramatically. "Honestly, Jasmine, that's the role that suits you." I looked at her, unreadable. Then I let out a quiet, cold chuckle. "So you're saying I have no place in this company?" Her eyes sparkled with satisfaction, thinking she had crushed me. "Of course," she replied. "All you do is scroll your phone and drain resources. You know nothing about business or real work. If it weren't for your relationship with Mr. Sullivan, you'd have been gone long ago." She leaned in, whispering with venom. "Keeping someone like you? What a waste of space." I raised a finger slowly, as if gently correcting a child. "No, no, no," I said, voice smooth. "I agree with everything you just said, except for one thing." Her smirk faltered ever so slightly. Just a flicker, but enough for me to see. "And what's that?" she asked. I met her gaze, steady and calm. "You don't actually believe Sullivan Group can survive without me, do you?" That flicker in her eyes, the brief uncertainty, was deliciously revealing. I let a smile creep in, not triumphant, but assured. "You're absolutely right," I said clearly. "If I leave, Sullivan Group will collapse." The moment those words escaped my lips, the air shifted. Murmurs rippled across the room, like a gust of wind before a thunderstorm. "She's insane. Is she serious? This is a Fortune 500 company. She's been leeching off the CEO for years. She's nothing. Let them talk." People often mock what they don't understand. Their ignorance was not my concern. Their laughter couldn't rewrite history. Because here's what they didn't know. 3 years ago, Sullivan Group was barely afloat. Its entire staff could fit in a single meeting room. The company was days away from collapse. And now, it stood among the top publicly traded corporations in the country, with tens of thousands of employees. With global reach, that wasn't luck. That wasn't Brian. That was strategy. That was structure. That was me. Or more precisely, that was the force standing behind me. And I still remember the day it began, when Brian's grandfather, Francis Sullivan, crossed the country just to kneel at my feet. He came to me once, Francis Sullivan, not with pride, but with desperation trembling in his hands. Then, he brought with him an old faded contract, an agreement inked decades ago, bearing the signatures of our grandfathers, their seals pressed deep in crimson wax, a marriage arranged not by love, but by legacy. I was young then, too young to understand that love, when shaped by duty, can be a quiet cage. I believed in the wisdom of ancestry, that if my grandfather had chosen this path, it must have been for something greater than myself. So I agreed. I married into a dynasty, not knowing that one day, after lifting that very dynasty out of decay and obscurity, I would be cast aside like a pawn, sacrificed the moment I was no longer convenient. That thought, sharp and bitter, set something ablaze inside me. Did the Sullivan family truly believe they could erase me, that they could write me out of the narrative I helped build, as though I were merely a footnote? They forgot something. I was not the woman I used to be. And if they insisted on keeping Brian at the helm, then they should be prepared to watch everything they built come crumbling down, because I knew how this empire was made, and I also knew how it could unravel. I turned on my heel, prepared to confront the patriarch himself, if war was what they wanted. But then, wait, the word sliced through the tension like a knife. I paused, my fingers curled slightly, restraining the flood of emotion. I turned my head slowly. It was Natalie. "Jasmine," she called out, voice laced with provocation. "Are you just going to walk away like that?" I arched a brow, gaze sweeping past her, as if she were a child pulling on the sleeve of a master. "What now, Natalie? Are you planning to invite me to dinner?" She smirked, arms folded, eyes scanning me like a predator gauging its prey. "Before you go," she said, her voice now amplified through a microphone, echoing across the hall, "you need to return everything that belongs to the company." I narrowed my eyes. "I've already handed in my badge. What else is there?" Her laughter followed, cruel and calculated. "Your uniform." A collective gasp, a wave of murmurs and widened eyes, and then chaos. Some employees chuckled, reveling in the drama. Others looked on in horror, unsure whether to intervene or stay silent. A few who once shared coffee and small talk with me now glanced away, ashamed but paralyzed. And Natalie? She stood tall, drinking in the moment as if it were victory wine. She thought she had reduced me to nothing. She mistook silence for surrender. But I understood exactly what was happening. This was not about policy or professionalism. It was about spectacle, about the primitive thrill of watching someone fall. What a perfect reflection of human nature. When you rise, they smile. When you stumble, they sharpen their knives and circle like wolves. So much for corporate ethics, so much for family. I studied the room. These were the same people who once bowed in deference, who smiled too wide and spoke too sweet. Yet the moment my name lost its weight, they lost their backbone. Sullivan Group had grown too fast, too proudly, and pride, when untethered from humility, always feeds its own collapse. Natalie's smirk twitched as I remained still. Impatience began to bubble beneath her facade. Tap, tap, tap. Her nails clinked against the microphone, echoing like a clock ticking toward judgment. "Hey, Jasmine, I'm talking to you." Her voice now sharp, laced with contempt. "Or are you pretending not to hear me?" I let out a soft laugh, cool, unbothered, my voice calm when I finally spoke. "What if I refuse?" She blinked, just once. A flicker of surprise, quickly buried beneath her usual disdain. "Wow," she sneered. "You really think you can stand up to me? You're the first person who's dared to challenge me publicly. I don't know who filled your head with this ridiculous confidence, She tilted her head, studying me like I was some child, still pretending to be queen. "Even your own husband doesn't want you," she said, venom softening into a smirk. "What right do you have to act strong in front of me?" And I laughed in a deep, slow chuckle, not of amusement, but revelation, as if something inside me had finally awakened. "And who told you," I said, my voice cutting through the air like silk-draped steel, "that I ever needed Brian?" That line didn't just silence her. It punctured something deeper, something in all of them. Before Natalie could reply, others joined in. Her loyal echo chamber. "Oh, please, look who's talking. She's just Sullivan's lapdog." A pretty face leeching off a man. I watched them, one by one. Each voice, a reflection of their own fear. The fear that a woman who stands alone must be either mad or dangerous. They still didn't understand. I didn't rise because of Brian. I rose despite him. If Mr. Sullivan heard this, I bet she'd be kneeling all night when she gets home. Their laughter was loud, boisterous, as if humiliating me with some grand joke they all shared. I remained silent, but my fingers curled slightly at my sides. Not in anger. No, I had long since learning to master my emotions in situations like these. Instead, I committed each of their faces, their names, their sneering voices to memory. People like them thrived on the illusion of security, on the belief that the powerful would always remain powerful, and the weak would always stay beneath them if only they knew. I tilted my head slightly, my voice smooth and deliberate, if I'm not mistaken. I said slowly, "You are all part of Natalie's little clique, aren't you?" A ripple of flickered across their faces before they quickly masked it with indignant expressions. "That's ridiculous," one of them snapped. "We have nothing to do with Natalie." "Exactly," another added hastily. "We are just stepping in because we can't stand you. Hogging company resources." "You," a third sneered, "someone abandoned by the company." "What? Right? Do you have to question us?" Their bravado was almost amusing. As a seasoned business person, spotting corruption, favoritism, and backroom deals was second nature to me. From the very start of this event, these people had been exchanging knowing glances with Natalie. They had received the biggest bonuses during the company's New Year distribution. Their envelopes so thick with cash that they could barely fit in their pockets. The company had always had a clear policy: equal bonuses for all employees, regardless of position or seniority. Yet somehow these individuals had walked away with far more than the others. It wasn't difficult to piece together what had happened. Natalie had been pulling the strings behind the scenes, and Brian blind, arrogant. Brian had been foolish enough to entrust her with that kind of authority. Even I, the real architect behind Sullivan Group's success, found this level of incompetence almost unbearable to watch. I took a deep breath, forcing myself to stay calm, as my sharp gaze swept over them. The air turned thick, the room falling into a tense silence, as if even time itself hesitated. "I admit, I do look better than all of you," I said, my voice steady, laced with a cool detachment. "And yes, I'm definitely younger." I paused for effect, watching their smug expressions falter ever so slightly. Then, just as they started to process my words, my voice rose abruptly, turning sharp as a blade. "But I personally despise the term pretty face." A cold smile tugged at my lips, though my eyes remained void of amusement. "So I suggest you refrain from using it in the future." I stepped forward slightly, the click of my heels against the marble floor echoing like a countdown. My voice lowered, but it carried an unmistakable edge, like the whisper of a storm rolling in. "Otherwise, I'll get angry, and trust me, you won't like the consequences." A shudder rippled through the group in front of me. Their postures stiffened, their gazes darting toward each other, seeking reassurance. They couldn't find the air around us, grew heavier, suffocating, as if my words had sucked the oxygen out of the room across from me. Natalie's confidence, smirk, faltered for the briefest second before she forced it back into place. Her eyes darkened, her lips curling into a sneer, as she crossed her arms over her chest. "Jasmine, do you really think you deserve any respect?" she scoffed, stepping forward. Her tone dripped with venom. her words slow and deliberate, like she was savoring each syllable. "You are nothing but a worthless reject, thrown out by the company like yesterday's trash. And yet here you are trying to discipline my employees in front of me." She tilted her head, letting out a condescending chuckle. "Let me make one thing clear. You are not just fired today. I'll make sure you are utterly humiliated." Her voice was sickly sweet, the kind of faux sympathy that barely masked her cruelty. "I almost laughed, almost Natalie," I said, meeting her gaze with a calm expression, though deep inside amusement flickered. "Are you even qualified to speak on behalf of the company?" Natalie's nostrils flared, and she dramatically waved her hand, as if swatting away a pesky insect. "Of course I am," she declared, her voice puffed up with self-importance. Then, as if she'd been saving her trump card for the perfect moment, her lips twisted into a smirk. "Oh, and Jasmine, let me enlighten you. Your husband is about to divorce you." She paused, her eyes gleaming with sadistic pleasure. "Mr. Sullivan never liked you, not even for a single second." I arched a brow, the corners of my lips curling into a subtle smile. There wasn't a trace of panic on my face, only a detached curiosity, as though she had just informed me that it might rain later. "Oh," I mused, my voice light, almost amused. "And did he tell you that himself?" Natalie's confidence swelled, mistaking my indifference for distress. She nodded with exaggerated certainty, a look of disdain flashing in her eyes. "Of course. Do you seriously think the chairman of a publicly listed company would ever be interested in a mere pretty face like you?" She scoffed, rolling her eyes dramatically. "If it weren't for the old chairman's favor, you would have been kicked out ages ago." "Ah, just as I suspected. The Sullivans think they've outgrown me, that they're finally ready to spread their wings, and so free from my shadow. What a shame. They must have forgotten who it was that built their empire in the first place, who pulled them up from the mud and made them the most powerful of midnight alleys for great families in such a short time. And just as I built them up, I could just as easily tear them down. Bringing them to ruin would be as effortless as making a single phone call." But then an idea struck me. Where's the fun in ending the game so soon? A game of cat and mouse is only entertaining if you play it to the very end. And the real protagonist of this game hadn't even made his entrance yet. Unaware of my thoughts, Natalie took my silence as fear. Her arrogance swelled her confidence, feeding on what she believed to be my submission. "Hey, Jasmine, we're all waiting." She smirked, arms crossed, her voice thick with mockery. "Are you going to strip, or should we help you, Pharaoh? If you don't start now, I'll have someone do it for you." Natalie sneered, her voice dripping with arrogance. Then, without hesitation, she lifted her microphone and barked toward the entrance security. "Get in here." Her voice echoed through the venue, silencing the murmurs of the onlooking employees. Within moments, over a dozen uniformed security guards, each wearing the Sullivan Group emblem, stormed in with a rigid sense of duty. Their presence alone sent a wave of tension through the room at Natalie's command. They moved swiftly, surrounding me in a tight circle. The air grew heavy, filled with the faint scent of cologne, and the polished leather of their shoes against the floor. A few employees shifted uncomfortably, sensing that things had escalated beyond mere office politics. Meanwhile, Natalie stepped down from the stage. Though she was careful to keep her distance, for all her bravado, she was nothing more than a coward, too afraid to confront me directly. She hovered at least 2 meters away, using the wall of security guards as her shield, her arms crossed in smug satisfaction. I met her gaze, my voice steady, unwavering. "Natalie," I said, my tone laced with amusement, "are you really resorting to force?" I took a deliberate step forward, watching as she instinctively tensed her fingers, tightening around the microphone. "Have you forgotten? I'm still legally married to Brian." I continued, my voice lowering to a dangerous calm. "Aren't you afraid that Mr. Sullivan will hold you accountable for this later?" The moment the words left my lips, Natalie tilted her head button and let out a loud, mocking laugh, as if I had just told the most ridiculous joke she'd ever heard. "Jasmine, Jasmine," she sighed dramatically, shaking her head. "I knew you'd try to use Mr. Sullivan as your shield. That's why I came prepared." Her smirk widened as she pulled out her phone in a deliberate theatrical motion. "Let's hear what Mr. Sullivan himself has to say, shall we?" With a flick of her thumb, she dialed a number and held the phone up for everyone to see, her eyes gleaming with cruel satisfaction. The call connected almost instantly, Brian's voice sharp and impatient, cut through the tense silence. "Jasmine, I want a divorce." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Some exchanged knowing glances, others watched eagerly, waiting for my reaction. I remained utterly expressionless, unfazed by the dramatic declaration. My lips curled into a slow, almost amused smile as I spoke, my tone carrying the faintest hint of mockery. "Judging by your tone, Mr. Sullivan, I assume you've already found someone to replace me." Even through the phone, I could hear the excitement in his voice. The bearer contained triumph. "Just tell me how much you want," he said bluntly, skipping past all pretense. "Name your price as long as you agree to the divorce. I don't care how much it costs." He continued, sidestepping my question entirely. I wasn't in a hurry after all. Boiling a frog in warm water takes patience. No need for money, I said nonchalantly, inspecting my nails as if this conversation bored me. "I have a feeling it won't be long before the Sullivans collapse completely." The air in the room shifted. The casual indifference in my voice sent a ripple of our knees through the onlookers. Then my tone turned ice cold. "Right now, I only want to know one thing: who had the audacity to interfere and try to take my man?" Brian's response came swiftly, laced with contempt. "You are not worthy of knowing her name," he sneered. "But I can tell you this: she's from Sunset City, a place far beyond your reach." Hearing that, I almost burst into laughter. Sunset City. So she's from the same place as me. How ironic. Did Brian really think I wouldn't know who she was? Now my curiosity was piqued. Who exactly was this woman who had the nerve to challenge me, who was so bold, so utterly foolish, that she dared to lay hands on what was mine? Before I could respond, Natalie snatched the phone back, her impatience finally boiling over. All right, she interrupted, rolling her eyes. "Even if Mr. Sullivan told you, what could you possibly do about it?" She tilted her head, eyes gleaming with wicked amusement. "Let's be real, Jasmine, you don't stand a chance, so why don't you be smart about this? Strip down, take the breakup fee, and walk away with some dignity." She let out a cold, delighted laugh. "For someone like you, isn't that kind of trade a win-win?" Despite Natalie's repeated provocations, I didn't retaliate. I endured, not out of fear, but because I needed to figure out who was orchestrating this entire charade from the shadows. There was no way she had the guts to pull something like this on her own. But now that the truth had surfaced, there was no reason for me to tolerate her any longer. Enough. I snapped, my voice slicing through the tension-filled air like a blade. The room, which had been buzzing with whispered conversations and smug laughter, fell into stunned silence. Every pair of eyes turned to me, some surprised, others amused, but none of them ready for what I was about to say. "Next, this meeting is over," I declared, my gaze sweeping across the room, taking in the faces of those who had just been laughing at my expense. "And now I'm giving all of you two choices: leave immediately, or stay and be my enemies." I let my words hang in the air for a second before lowering my voice to an icy warning. "And let me make one thing very clear: I never show mercy to my enemies." A beat of silence passed, then laughter erupted from the employees. "Did you all hear that?" one of them jeered, his voice dripping with mockery. "This little wretch actually thinks she can give us orders. Hilarious." "Jasmine, do you still think you are the manager here?" another chimed in, shaking his head in disbelief. "You all heard the call just now, didn't you?" a third voice sneered. "Even Mr. Sullivan has thrown you away. What, right? Do you have to act high and mighty?" The words stung, not because they were true, but because they revealed how shallow these people were. I had never asked for their loyalty, nor did I expect gratitude. But to see them turn so quickly, tearing me down the moment they thought I had lost power, it was laughable. I swallowed the bitterness rising in my throat and exhaled slowly. My voice, though calm, carried the weight of something unshakable. Ever heard the saying, "There's always someone stronger out there"? My eyes swept over their faces, memorizing the smirks, the smugness, the certainty that I was finished. I let them gloat. I, Jasmine, do not need a man to stand my ground. Their sneering faces no longer angered me, only disappointed me. So this was what the workplace was truly like. They had called me a pretty face, a delicate flower, a useless trophy wife. I had laughed it off, but now the moment Brian decided to discard me, they suddenly believed they had the right to ridicule me, to tear me apart, like scavengers over a carcass. Was this the price of keeping a low profile? Because of my unique identity? I had always chosen to stay under the radar, rarely appearing in public. Even when I overheard the employees gossiping about me, whispering behind my back, I had merely smiled and let it slide. But I never expected that my patience, my easygoing attitude, would be mistaken for weakness, that my silence would embolden their arrogance. Natalie, sensing that I wasn't breaking the way she wanted, grew impatient. Her expression darkened, her hands clenching into fists. "Jasmine, I'll count to 3, she warned, her voice cold. "If you don't strip, I'll have them do it for you." I turned my head slightly, casting her a lazy sidelong glance. My lips curled into a smirk. All right, I drawled, arms crossed as I leaned back slightly. "I've played along with your little show long enough. I think it's time to put on a performance of my own." Natalie's face twisted in rage, losing the last shred of her composure. She rolled up her sleeves and lunged at me, her movements fueled by fury and humiliation. And just then, bang! The heavy doors of the conference room burst open, slamming against the walls with a resounding echo. Every employee, including Natalie, instinctively turned toward the entrance. The air seemed to shift, tension crackling like static electricity. A woman about my age strolled in at a leisurely pace, her every step deliberate, her presence commanding. "Jasmine," she called out, her voice smooth, yet edged with something sharper. "I heard you were looking for me." The room held its breath. Natalie's face paled. I narrowed my eyes. "Hannah." My voice was calm, but my fingers curled ever so slightly. What are you doing here?" Natalie let out a sharp gasp, her reaction immediately, drawing every pair of eyes in the room toward the mysterious newcomer. The air in the hall grew heavy, thick with an unsettling tension. As all conversations came to a halt, Hannah arched a perfectly sculpted brow, the corners of her lips curving into a knowing smirk. As she took slow, deliberate steps toward me, her heels clicked against the marble floor, each step radiating confidence and arrogance, as if she owned the very ground she walked on. Judging by that reaction, she mused, tilting her head slightly, "You must be the one from the Sunset City." Her voice dripped with amusement laced with the kind of condescension only someone used to absolute power could wield. I met her gaze, my expression unreadable. "You are absolutely right," she confirmed, her smirk widening. "And yes, I have my eyes on your husband." She said it so casually, as if she was simply claiming an object. She had set her sights on something that was already hers for the taking. "If the Sullivans want to expand into the Sunset City, they'll need my support, and in return, Brian is more than willing to marry me." She crossed her arms, finally sparing me a glance, but it was fleeting, dismissive. "So tell me, what's the issue?" Her arrogance was suffocating her sheer sense of entitlement, enough to make the room feel smaller. I remained motionless, my tone light but firm. "So you came here today just to force me into a divorce." Hannah let out a soft sigh, as if she genuinely pitied me. Then she gave a slow, deliberate nod. "Jasmine, from what I've heard, you and Brian have been married for 3 years, yet has never even held your hand." She let the words linger in the air before adding, "Honestly, that makes it all the sweeter for me." Then with a cruel laugh, she threw her head back, her amusement completely unrestrained. The sound grated against my ears, but it didn't spark even the slightest anger within me. If anything, I found it all incredibly laughable. I lazily waved a hand, dismissing her presence, as if she were nothing more than an annoying insect buzzing in my ear. "If you love taking other people's husbands that much, then by all means you can have him," I said, my tone laced with indifference. But then, as if something genuinely amused me, I let out a sudden laugh, the sound crisp and light, yet carrying an unmistakable edge. "I just didn't realize that under the Emperor's nose, a rat like you could crawl out of the gutter." The moment the words left my lips, the smirk on Hannah's face vanished. Her expression twisted, the amusement draining from her eyes, replaced by simmering rage. Her voice wavered barely, keeping her fury in check. "Jasmine, how dare you insult me?" Her tone sharpened, her body visibly tensing as she spat out. "Do you have any idea what the Sunset City represents? Do you even know what the Carters stand for? If you piss me off today, I swear your entire family will pay the price." I tilted my head slightly, letting out a soft chuckle, my amusement only growing as I watched her unravel. "The Carters," I echoed, as if tasting the name on my tongue, then shrugged. "You make them sound far scarier than they really are." I let the words hang for a moment before my eyes locked onto hers, my gaze unwavering. But I mused, my voice dropping just enough to make the air feel heavier. "That last sentence of yours actually reminded me of something." "You are right," I continued, my lips curling into a smirk that mirrored her earlier. "1. If you piss me off, then it's not just you. The entire Carter family will be buried alongside you." The hall was deathly silent. Then, before Hannah could even process my words, my hand shot out. Smack! The crisp, resounding slap echoed throughout the room. The impact so forceful that Hannah staggered backward, her body utterly unprepared for the sheer strength behind it. For a moment, she stood frozen, eyes wide with disbelief. Then, as if her body finally registered the pain, she collapsed onto the floor, her hand flying to her burning cheek. The collective gasp that followed was almost deafening. "Holy shit, did she just slap someone from the Sunset City? Does she have a death wish?" Exactly. If I were her, I'd have just quietly signed the divorce papers. Why start a fight? Murmurs of shock and disbelief rippled through the crowd, employees exchanging stunned glances. Even Natalie, who had been enjoying the show moments ago, now looked like she was second-guessing her entire existence. I paid them no mind. I took a slow step forward, my gaze lowering to meet Hannah's, as she sat sprawled on the ground, her face pale with humiliation and barely contained fury, still laughing. I asked, my voice a quiet challenge. Hannah clenched her jaw so tightly I could almost hear her teeth grinding, but she didn't speak. She couldn't. Brian scoffed, mistaking my words for desperation. His tone turned even more condescending. "Whoever regrets it is a dog happy now," seeing the smug look on his face. Whatever lingering goodwill I had for the Sullivans vanished completely. "Brian, you are mistaken," I said calmly. "I never intended to persuade you to stay. I simply wanted to warn you. Because of you, the entire Sullivan family will crumble. And as for Miss Hannah from Sunset City, she won't be spared either." I had initially considered letting the Sullivans off out of respect for past generations, but some people simply refuse to appreciate kindness, Brian being one of them. "Jasmine, have you even looked at yourself in the mirror? What makes you think you can compare to Hannah? She could crush you with just a flick of her finger." Brian was about to continue his taunts, but I raised a hand to cut him off. "Enough. I won't waste any more words. We'll do as you said, divorce." It is at that moment Francis Sullivan, who had been watching the scene unfold, was livid. But no matter how hard he tried to reason with Brian, his words fell on deaf ears. Brian even had people restrain him to keep him from interfering. "I've already arranged the divorce papers. You just need to sign them," Brian said, gesturing to the stack of documents on the table. Seeing the neatly prepared papers only confirmed what I had suspected all along, from the moment Natalie fired me, to Hannah's sudden appearance from Sunset City, to Brian publicly forcing me into this divorce. It had all been planned from the very beginning for someone like him. I had no reason to show even a shred of mercy. Without hesitation, I signed my name and pushed the papers back across the table. A flicker of dissatisfaction crossed Brian's eyes at how decisively I acted. "Jasmine, what's so funny?" I looked up at him, my expression devoid of emotion. Oh, am I not allowed to be just as happy as you? The Sullivans, they mean nothing to me, just a single word from me, and they'll be gone. So I suggest you hurry up and sign as well, before your precious Hannah decides she doesn't want you anymore. Brian's face flushed red with anger. Fine, I'll sign as if I ever cared about you. He shot me a glare before scrolling his name on the divorce agreement. And just like that, my 3-year marriage officially came to an end. Strangely, as I watched him put pen to paper, I felt no sadness, no regret. Instead, an overwhelming sense of relief washed over me, as if a massive weight had finally been lifted from my shoulders. As soon as the documents were finalized, Brian shot me another glare. It's done now. Get out of my sight, Mr. Sullivan. Don't be so impatient. Hannah represents the elite of Sunset City. If we offend her, how is Sullivan Group supposed to survive in the future? Natalie's voice rang with urgency, and the weight of her words seemed to sway the crowd. Many employees exchanged nervous glances before nodding, in agreement, their fear of the Carters outweighing any lingering loyalty. They might have had murmurs spread like wildfire, voices filled with hesitation and uncertainty. But amid the growing unrest, one man remained unmoved, Francis Sullivan to the untrained eye. He might have looked like just another frail old man standing at the twilight of his years, powerless, irrelevant, clinging to the past. But I knew better. I had seen the cunning behind those aged eyes, the sharpness that hadn't dulled with time. This wasn't a man lost in senility. This was his final gamble, his last desperate attempt to safeguard Sullivan Group's future. I leaned back in my seat, finding the perfect vantage point to watch the spectacle unfold. I had no intention of interfering. If the legendary founder of Sullivan Group wanted to take the stage, then I would be more than happy to sit back and enjoy the show. And he didn't disappoint. Francis, despite his advanced years, showed no concern for his dignity, as he suddenly raised a trembling finger and pointed it straight at Natalie. His frail frame shook not from weakness, but from sheer rage. Natalie, he bellowed, his voice carrying the weight of decades spent building this empire from the ground up. As the founder of this company, I am ordering you to apologize to Jasmine right now. A heavy silence fell over the room. Otherwise, he continued, his voice hard as steel. Don't bother showing up here ever again. Then, in a move that stunned everyone, Francis let go of his cane. The wooden stick clattered to the floor as he straightened his back, standing tall and firm in front of me. If anyone dares to lay a hand on Jasmine today, he declared, his gaze sweeping over the crowd, they'll have to step over my dead body. His words landed like a hammer, shattering any illusion of control. Natalie thought she had her breath hitched for the first time since this entire fiasco began. Uncertainty flickered in her eyes. On one side, she had the powerful Carter family from Sunset City, an alliance that could elevate Sullivan Group beyond its current status. On the other, she had Francis Sullivan, the very man who had built this company from nothing, now standing in defiance. She couldn't afford to offend either side. Just as hesitation rooted her to the spot, the tense atmosphere was abruptly shattered by the sound of hurried footsteps. Bang! The doors burst open, and in stormed Brian. He was still clutching his briefcase, his tie slightly loosened, as if he had rushed over straight from a meeting. His gaze swept across the room, taking in the chaos, the fallen cane, his grandfather standing protectively in front of me, and most of all the stunned faces of his employees. Then his eyes landed on me. His expression darkened instantly, rage flickering across his face like an impending storm. Jasmine, he growled, his voice dripping with anger. How dare you lay a hand on Hannah? Get over here and apologize right now. I remained seated, my expression unchanging. Slowly, deliberately, I lifted my gaze and locked eyes with him. Mr. Sullivan, I said, coolly, my voice laced with a quiet intensity. I believe the one who should be apologizing. Here is you for a fleeting second. Something unreadable flashed in Brian's eyes. Surprise, hesitation, maybe even doubt, but it was gone as quickly as it came, replaced by that same cold indifference. I had grown so accustomed to Jasmine. You have no one to blame but yourself. He scoffed. You failed. You had 3 years. And what do you have to show for it? His words were sharp, but they didn't cut the way he intended. The Sullivan family has already risen to the top of Midnight Alley's 4 great families. He continued, his tone growing smug. The only way to expand further is to establish a foothold in Sunset City. He took a step forward, as if he was delivering some grand revelation, and aligning with the Carters is the best possible choice. I met his gaze unflinching. When I spoke again, my voice was ice cold, carrying the weight of something Brian had failed to consider, something he would soon regret. So you've been lying to me from the very beginning, haven't you? My voice was steady, the storm brewing inside me was anything but calm. I had always chosen to stay out of the company's internal affairs, letting Brian play the role of the so-called CEO. But this time he had gone too far, divorcing me, his own wife, just to secure a business deal with an outsider. I had never expected love from him, but I had at least assumed there was some level of respect between us. Clearly, I had overestimated him. Brian, however, didn't even flinch at my accusation. Instead, he met my gaze with an almost indifferent expression and shrugged. You are absolutely right, he admitted without hesitation. The only reason I married you in the first place was because my grandfather forced me to. But now that he's getting old, I think it's time I started making my own decisions. I narrowed my eyes, my voice dropping into a dangerous calm. Brian, you do realize that this counts as adultery, right? A flicker of unease crossed his face, but he quickly masked it, avoiding my gaze. The tension in the room thickened as if everyone was holding their breath, waiting for what would happen next. Before Brian could come up with an excuse, a scoffing voice rang out from behind him. Oh, spare me the drama. Hannah stepped forward, her every movement exuding the arrogance of someone who had never been denied anything in her life. She wore a smug expression, as if this entire situation was nothing more than a minor inconvenience. Cut the nonsense. We all know what you really want, money. She folded her arms across her chest, a condescending smirk tugging at the corners of her lips. Just name your price. I've got more than enough to throw at you. I stared at her, utterly unimpressed. She really thought everything in the world revolved around money, didn't she? Typical Sunset City princess. So privileged, so coddled, she had no idea how real power worked. I took a slow step forward. My voice dropping just enough to send a chill down her spine. Hannah, consider this a fair warning. Even if you come from Sunset City, you will be held accountable for your actions today. The moment those words left my lips, Brian's patience snapped. His face twisted in anger as he pointed a finger at me. Jasmine, stop trying to intimidate people. You are nothing but a dog. The Sullivan family raised the room, fell into stunned silence. You've been married to me for years, yet you've never done a single meaningful thing. All you ever do is loiter around the company, accomplishing nothing. He took a step closer, his voice laced with utter disdain. Let me be blunt. If it weren't for my grandfather, I would have divorced you a long time ago. A murmur rippled through the crowd before it turned into full-blown laughter. I haven't done anything. Does he really believe the Sullivan family's meteoric rise had nothing to do with me? I clenched my fists at my sides, but not out of anger. No, it was something far colder, more calculating. Perhaps Francis Sullivan had deliberately kept the truth from him. Perhaps he had been too afraid that if Brian learned who I truly was, he'd be forced to admit that the company's success had never been his doing. I didn't blame Francis for that. After all, keeping a low profile was always the wisest choice for someone born in the capital. But Brian was a fool. His outburst only fueled the gears around me. Did you all hear that? She's just a useless, pretty face, good for nothing except looking nice. Exactly. At least Hannah is from the prestigious Carter family. She's on a whole different level compared to this worthless woman. If Ms. Sullivan marries Ms. Carter, the company will finally be able to expand into Sunset City. Hannah bashed in their flattery, tilting her head as if she were already the queen of Sullivan Group. Meanwhile, I stood there watching them, listening to their words, and realizing something. Not a single person here had the spine to stand up for me, because in their eyes, everything boiled down to profit and transactions, morality, principles. They never mattered in the first place. Brian scoffed, mistaking my words for desperation. His lips curled into a sneer, his arrogance growing unbearable. Whoever regrets it is a dog happy now. His tone dripped with condescension. His expression filled with smug satisfaction, as if he had just won some grand victory. He leaned back slightly, crossing his arms, confident that I was on the verge of breaking at that moment. Whatever lingering goodwill I had for the Sullivans vanished completely like a candle extinguished in the wind. "Brian, you are mistaken," I said, my voice unnervingly calm. His smirk faltered, just a little perhaps, thrown off by my composure. "I never intended to persuade you to stay." I continued my gaze, steady, unwavering. "I simply wanted to warn you. Because of you, the entire Sullivan family will crumble." I let my words sink in before delivering the final blow. "And as for Miss Hannah from Sunset City, she won't be spared either." For a fleeting moment, a shadow of doubt flickered across Brian's face, but it was gone in an instant, replaced by sheer disdain. "Jasmine, have you even looked at yourself in the mirror?" He let out a derisive chuckle. "What makes you think you can compare to Hannah?" He leaned in slightly, his voice lowering, dripping with mockery. "She could crush you with just a flick of her finger." Brian was gearing up for another round of taunts, but I raised a hand, cutting him off, mid-sentence enough. The single word was sharp, final. The room fell into a tense silence, thick with unspoken tension. "I won't waste any more words," I said, my tone, devoid of emotion. "Will do as you said, divorce." It is from the corner of my eye, I saw Francis Sullivan, who had been observing the entire exchange. His face twisted with fury, his lips parted, desperate to interject to talk some sense into Brian, but his words fell on deaf ears. Brian, indifferent to his father's outrage, had his men restrain him, ensuring he couldn't interfere. "I've already arranged the divorce papers." Brian gestured toward the stack of documents neatly placed on the table, his voice casual, almost indifferent. "You just need to sign them." My gaze drifted to the papers, their crisp vase reflecting the cold, calculated scheme that had been set in motion long before today. From the moment Natalie fired me to Hannah's sudden arrival from Sunset City, to Brian's very public humiliation of me, it had all been orchestrated. Every piece meticulously placed, every move calculated. How pathetic did they truly think? I wouldn't see through it. For someone like Brian, I had no reason to show even a shred of mercy. Without hesitation, I picked up the pen, my finger steady, and signed my name in bold, decisive strokes. The ink hadn't even dried when I pushed the papers back across the table. A flicker of dissatisfaction crossed Brian's eyes. He hadn't expected me to act so quickly, so cleanly, without a single trace of hesitation. "Jasmine," he scoffed, trying to regain control of the situation. "What's so funny?" I looked up at him, my expression unreadable. "Oh, am I not allowed to be just as happy as you?" I tilted my head slightly, studying him like one might examine an insignificant bug. "The Sullivans," I let out a quiet chuckle, the sound devoid of warmth. "They mean nothing to me, just a single word from me, and they'll be gone." Brian's jaw tightened. He tried to mask it, but I saw it, the briefest flicker of her knees. "So I suggest you hurry up and sign as well," I continued smoothly, "before your precious Hannah decides she doesn't want you anymore." His face darkened instantly, the veins in his temple throbbing fine. He snapped, grabbing the pen with unnecessary force. "I'll sign as if I ever cared about you." He scrawled his name onto the divorce agreement with such force that the paper nearly tore beneath the pressure. And just like that, my 3-year marriage came to an end. Strangely, as I watched him put pen to paper, I felt nothing. No sadness, no regret. Instead, An overwhelming sense of relief washed over me like a suffocating weight had finally been lifted from my shoulders. The chains had been broken as soon as the documents were finalized. Brian shot me another glare, his tone sharp and impatient. "It's done now. Get out of my sight." I met his gaze unbothered. Then with a slow, deliberate smile, I spoke, "Mr. Sullivan, don't be so impatient with employees like these. It wouldn't be long before the company collapsed. Brian isn't divorced. What you wanted. I'll grant your wish," I said, my voice steady. "But I have one condition." Brian looked at me with utter disdain. "Go ahead. What do you want? Money? Property? I can give you whatever you ask for." I smiled and shook my head. "I just want to tell you one thing. After the divorce, don't come crying back to me." I let out a cold laugh, my tone void of warmth. "Since I no longer have anything to do with the Sullivans, I believe it's time we settle the rest of our accounts." Before my words had even fully settled the ever-silent, Hannah finally stepped forward. "Did I hear that right? Did you just say you want to settle scores with me? Jasmine, do you even know who I am?" Brian's face lit up with excitement the moment he saw Hannah stepping in to defend him. Watching the scene unfold, I couldn't help but chuckle. "The Carters, her," I said, my voice laced with amusement. "You are just as stupid as your man. Before you start acting all high and mighty, you should at least check if you have what it takes." Before Hannah could even respond, Brian jumped in, eager to flaunt his so-called superiority. "Jasmine, open your damn eyes and take a good look." He practically spat the words out, his spit almost landing on my face. "Hannah is from the Carters, one of the 4 ruling families of the Sunset City. And who the hell are you?" The more he talked, the more worked up he became, as if saying Hannah's name alone was enough to crush me. I calmly stood up, unfazed, and pulled out my phone. "Hello, let the Carters know their dog just bit me." The moment I hung up, I glanced at the clock on the wall and started counting in my head. I didn't even reach 10 before Hannah's phone rang. She stiffened her expression, shifting from arrogance to sheer panic as she hesitated before answering. "Hello, Dad. It's me, Hannah." The next second, a thunderous roar erupted from the other end of the line. "Loud enough for everyone to hear, you ungrateful brat. Do you have any idea how much trouble you've caused me? Do you even have an ounce of respect for me?" Hannah forced a nervous laugh, trying to keep her composure. "Dad, can we talk about this calmly? There are people around. Can you at least let me save some face?" That was the wrong thing to say. Her father's fury only intensified his voice, nearly shaking through the phone. "Don't call me Dad. I don't have a daughter as brainless as you. This is my final warning. If you still want to be part of this family, apologize to Jasmine immediately. If not, I'll cut you off right now." Hannah had never seen her father this furious before. She was so terrified that she wet herself on the spot. The moment the call ended, she stumbled toward me, her legs shaking like jelly, and bowed at a full 90 degrees. "Jasmine, I was wrong. I'll leave right now." I pinched my nose in disgust and frowned. "Get lost, and don't show your face in Midnight Alley again. You are not welcome here." The moment I finished speaking, Hannah bolted out of the venue, like a scared rabbit from the moment she answered the phone to the second she disappeared. The entire ordeal had taken less than 10 minutes, yet in that short span, the entire crowd stood frozen, their jaws practically on the floor. What the hell just happened? How does Jasmine even know people from the Sunset City? Yeah, she's been working in Midnight Alley this whole time. Is she actually some hidden big shot? Don't even joke about that. If that's true, then Sullivan Group is done for ignoring their whispers. I leisurely strolled toward Brian, stopping just inches away. I tilted my head slightly, flashing him an ambiguous smile. "Brian, it's your turn. Next, the Sullivan family is up." Brian stared at me, utterly dumbfounded. "Jasmine, who exactly are you?" Before I could respond, the elderly Francis Sullivan, despite his frail body, rushed over as fast as he could, completely disregarding his own health. "You fall shut your mouth this instant. Haven't you caused enough trouble already?" After holding back for so long, Francis finally snapped. Do you still not understand why I made you marry Jasmine back then? Had it been anyone else today, I wouldn't have said a word, but of all people, you just had to offend Jasmine. If not for Jasmine, do you think the Sullivan Group would be where it is today? His words were like a hammer, striking the room into silence. No wonder the Sullivan family had managed to dominate Midnight Ali's business scene. Francis Sullivan's decisiveness and foresight had played a huge role, and now the long-buried truth behind that marriage contract had finally come to light. Brian was completely shaken after hearing his grandfather's words. He seemed to lose all strength, his mind reeling as the weight of the revelation settled in. Brian suddenly fell to his knees in front of me, tears streaming down his face. The atmosphere in the grand hall shifted in an instant. Every single person present looked at me in a completely different light. Shock, awe, and disbelief filled their gazes. Even the once arrogant Natalie was now trembling in the corner, too afraid to meet my eyes. I looked down at Brian from above, letting out a quiet sigh. "You should be grateful your grandfather saved you," I said softly. "Otherwise, you wouldn't even have the chance to kneel here and speak to me." Now hearing this, Brian's face twisted with regret, his tears falling uncontrollably. "Wife, I know I was wrong. I was reckless before. Can we start over? I swear from now on, I'll listen to everything you say. I won't doubt you ever again." By the end of his plea, Brian's voice had begun to choke with sobs. "The Sullivan Group cannot be ruined in my hands." I curled my lips into a cold smirk and spoke in a voice laced with ice. "Brian, I used to think you were just a man who liked to play around, but I never expected you to have the audacity to cheat. If I hadn't noticed something was off this time, I bet you and Hannah would already have a child by now. From now on, you Sullivans better keep a low profile. Otherwise, I won't hesitate to drag you into bankruptcy again." That last sentence wasn't just for Brian. It was also meant for Francis Sullivan. While I was making my stance clear, I was also giving the old man, a titan of the business world, a final bit of respect. After all, his relationship with my grandfather had been anything but ordinary. If not for that connection, I would never have agreed to this marriage in the first place. The grandfather and grandson exchanged glances. Then, as if by silent agreement, both lowered their heads, with Hannah sent back to Kyoto. Natalie lost her backing and was left entirely at my mercy. But I didn't even spare her a glance without hesitation. I turned and walked away. Francis Sullivan called after me, trying to make me stay, but I cut him off without a second thought. A man who cheats, Jasmine would never lower myself to be with someone like that. As for what would happen to the Sullivan family in the future, that was no longer my concern. I had fulfilled my grandfather's promise and spared the Sullivans from complete disgrace. That was more than enough. On the flight back to the Sunset City, I received a text from Brian. The message was brief, just one short sentence. "Jasmine, I'm sorry." I read it once, then without hesitation, deleted it and blocked his number. From this moment on, Brian and I were nothing more than strangers. Each of us would go our own way, living our own separate lives. Natalie gasped in shock, her voice drawing everyone's attention toward the mysterious newcomer. Hannah arched a brow and sauntered toward me with an air of arrogance. "Judging by that reaction, you must be the one from the Sunset City. You are absolutely right. And yes, I have my eyes on your husband." She smirked. "If the Sullivans want to expand into the Sunset City, they'll need my support, and in return, Brian is more than willing to marry me." "What's the issue?" Her tone was laced with sheer arrogance, and she didn't even bother sparing me a glance as she spoke. "So you came here today just to force me into a divorce?" I asked. Hannah nodded, her expression shifting into one of feigned sympathy. "Jasmine, from what I've heard, you and Brian have been married for 3 years. Yet he's never even held your hand. Honestly, that makes it all the sweeter for me." "Ha ha ha." She threw her head back and laughed, completely unrestrained. Her words, however, didn't anger me in the slightest. Instead, I casually waved her off. "If you love taking other people's husbands that much, then by all means you can have him then," as if something genuinely amused me. I suddenly burst into laughter. I just didn't realize that under the Emperor's nose, a rat like you could crawl out of the gutter. The moment my words landed, Hannah's face turned an ugly shade of black. Her voice wavered with barely contained rage. "Jasmine, how dare you insult me?" Her tone sharpened. "Do you have any idea what the Sunset City represents? Do you know what the Carters stand for? If you piss me off today, I swear your entire family will pay the price." I tilted my head slightly and let out a soft chuckle. "The Carters. You make them sound far scarier than they really are." But I paused, my eyes locking onto hers. "That last sentence of yours actually reminded me of something. You are right. If you piss me off, then it's not just you. The entire Carter family will be buried alongside you." Before she could react, my hand shot out, landing a crisp slap right across her face. Hannah, the pampered princess of the Sunset City, was so unaccustomed to being touched that she had no time to react. The sheer force of the blow sent her sprawling onto the ground. The crowd collectively gasped, jaws nearly hitting the floor. Holy shit! Did she just slap someone from the Sunset City? Does she have a death wish? Exactly. If I were her, I'd have just quietly signed the divorce papers. Why start a fight? By the time the plane touched down at Capital International Airport, the city was cloaked in the quiet stillness of early morning. A thin mist curled around the runways, the streetlights casting long golden streaks over the pavement. I walked through the arrival gates with effortless composure, my heels clicking softly against the marble floor at the exit. A sleek black car was already waiting. I recognized it instantly. Lucas never did things halfway. The driver, a man in his late 50s with sharp, knowing eyes, stepped forward and opened the door for me. "Miss Jasmine, Mr. Carter is expecting you." I slid into the back seat without hesitation. Inside, Lucas was waiting, dressed in a crisp navy suit, his silver watch catching the dim glow of the street lights. He exuded the same quiet authority he always did. His presence was never loud, never forceful, but it was impossible to ignore. He regarded me with a knowing smirk, fingers tapping lazily against the armrest. "You look surprisingly calm for someone who just burned bridges with the Sullivans." I arched a brow. "You expected me to cry about it." He let out a short chuckle, shaking his head. "No, I expected you to be plotting your next move." I leaned back against the leather seat, crossing one leg over the other. "Then you know me well." Lucas tilted his head slightly, studying me. "Tell me, Jasmine, what do you want?" I met his gaze, unflinching. "The same thing. You want Lucas' power." A slow grin spread across his lips. "Then let's talk business." As the car pulled away from the airport and disappeared into the city streets, I knew one thing for certain. The game wasn't just beginning. I was about to rewrite the rules. Thank you for watching today's story. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and share it with your friends. We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below, so feel free to share your opinions, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more great stories. We'll see you in the next video.